Visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Debashish Rai from Northeast, from Agartala Government Medical College, which is not a very old college. So today I'll be talking just about the randomized control trial. So my presentation outline will be the definition of RCT, the randomized control trial, need of RCT and types of RCT, what is clinical trial, objectives of clinical trials, importance of control group in RCT, importance of randomization and its methods, biases in RCT, clinical trial designs, RCT protocol development guideline, guideline for the trial reporting, and little outline about the critical appraisal of RCTs. So to start with, when a clinical research, which is experimental design and it is randomized, then it is called a randomized control trial. Now, the definition of RCT, actually the two important aspects of RCT are summarized in its name itself. There will be at least two groups, so just to compare, and patients are assigned randomly to these groups. It may be more than two groups, but at least there should be two groups to be compared. Now, it has been defined as an epidemiological experiment in which subjects in population are randomly allocated into groups, usually called study and control groups, to receive and not to receive an experimental preventive or therapeutic procedure or maneuver or intervention. It may be drug, it may be any other methods like say operational procedures, or it may be comparison between the medical management or between the surgical management, whatever it may be. Now, hierarchy of the RCT, it is quite up. It's just below the meta-analysis and the systematic reviews. Now, randomized control trial is a gold standard in epidemiological research, the most definitive tool for evaluation of the applicability of the clinical research. So, clinical research, whether it is applicable or not, so it is one of the most definitive tools. It is a prospective study comparing the effect and value of intervention against a control in the human being. The study participant must be followed forward in time. It is forward study. They need not be followed from the identical calendar date. Means the intervention may not be at the same time. It may be with the calendar time, it may be in various dates, and that to be followed. But it has to be followed as per the protocol. It should be followed equally. For company. Now, basic steps. Basically, the RCTs are broadly three steps: the plan, prepare, and perform. In the plan, the protocol to be developed, ethical approval, and selecting the reference and the experimental population. Under the prepare, that comes the randomization, that is the heart of the RCT, and we have to perform, followed by the performing the RCT, the intervention, follow-up, and assessment of the outcome. Now, this is just a basic design. The after protocol development, ethical approval, the study populations are randomly assigned between the treatment group and the comparator group or the current treatment, and then it will be followed to find out whether there is any improvement or not. Then it will be compared. Now, types of RCT, it may be clinical trial, preventive trial, risk factor trials, cessation experiment, then trial of etiological agents, evaluation health, and community intervention trials. So there are various types of randomized control trials are there. So now, what is clinical trials? It is a test of new intervention or treatment on people. WHO has defined any research study that prospectively assign human participants or group of humans to one or more health-related intervention to evaluate the effect on health outcome. So it will be assigned to the human participants in the different groups, and it will be compared. Now, why clinical trials are conducted? So suppose a new drug has been developed. Now, whether it is really effective or not. So just to allow the medical professionals and the patients to gain the information about the benefit, side effects, possible uses of new intervention, a new drug has been developed, whether it is working or not, whether it is better than the existing standard treatment or not, whether the new drug has been developed which is as good as not. So new drug may be in the form that it may require to give only once in a daily, or it may be cheaper drug. So in that case, you have to compare with the standard drug, available drug, whether it is as effective as the standard available treatment or not. To prove that, clinical trials are conducted. It is required to translate the result of basic scientific research into the better way to prevent, diagnose, and treat the diseases, bench to bedside. Now, objective of the clinical trials are normally conducted to evaluate new form of therapy or prevention methods, such as it may be new drug or treatment, new medical or healthcare technology, or maybe new methods, pattern of operations, new delivery system of healthcare, new methods of primary prevention, new program of screening or early detection. So to prove that, so we have to go through the clinical trials. Now, what is as we told, it is a randomized control trial. Now, what is the importance of control? Why should take the control? Because the goal of medical research is to find better way to treating the patients. Always there is a aim. So whatever available now, we want that we should treat the patient much more better way if available. So we have to find out the better way. The true value depends on what are compared with. Now we want the better way. So to say better need to be compared with something else. So that's why the controls are required. More effective is based on the comparison to something else. Now coming to the most important part of the randomized control trial is the randomization. Randomization is a key feature and the heart of randomized control trial. Just to define, randomization is a process by which each participant has the equal chance of being assigned to either intervention or the control. Now, randomization is the allocation of individuals to group by chance. Each sampling unit has the same chance or equal chance of selection. If there is two groups, any participant who is eligible, he will have the equal chance to be recruited in either of the two groups. And it makes the intervention and the control group comparable at the start of the investigation. At the start of the investigation, with the help of randomization, we will make the two groups comparable. Except the intervention, what is intended, every other factor should be equal to, and to do so, we have to go for the randomization. But why we randomize, I have already explained. If at the end of the clinical trial, a difference in outcome occurs between the two treatment groups, say it may be intervention and the control, the possible explanation for this difference would be, say suppose after a trial we got a result, is a positive result. Now what could be the cause of this positive result? The intervention exhibit a real effect is there, that's why we got the result, or the outcome difference is solely due to by chance we got the positive result, or there may be a systematic difference or the bias between the groups due to factors other than the intervention. There must be some other factors due to that, or due to some biasness we got these positive results. Now randomization actually aims to avoid this third possibility, so that we can say yes, it has the real effect. Now, why randomization? Ensure the comparability among the two groups. Two groups are equal. Avoid the selection bias. Procedural bias is by the randomization, it is minimized. Confounding and co-interventions and bias in outcome assignment are minimized. Ensure that only difference in group is intervention under the study. So by the randomization, we can say the difference between the two groups is only the intervention. Besides the intervention, there is no other difference. Both the groups are comparable. The randomization is so important because overall it provides the strongest evidence for causal relate inference. Now, what are the different forms of randomization? How we can randomize? It may be simple randomization, it may be permuted block randomization, stratified block randomization, dynamic or adaptive random allocation. So simple randomization may be coin tossing for each trial participants, or roll a 6-sided dice, or sequence of random numbers from a statistical textbook or computer generated sequence. Say simple randomization coin. If the participants are eligible, so we can simply a coin tossing, flip a coin. So head one group, tail one group. That is a one form of simple randomization. Or a roll a 6-sided dice. Say if the even number in one group, odd number comes in another group. Or we can go through the random textbooks, the random numbers which is available in the textbook, or online also we can go computer generated or websites. So random numbers can be generated. Sequence will be generation. Sequence generation will be there, and based on that, it may be either say if it is a even number in one group, odd number maybe in another. Now, what are the advantages of simple randomization? Each treatment assignment is completely unpredictable. We don't know exactly what the next patient, whether it will be recruited in group A or group B, or their control group or intervention group. And the probability theory guarantees that at the end, in the long run or at the end, the number of the patients in each treatment group will be equal, and there will be not much difference. So by this simple randomization, we can reduce the selection bias, then ensure the comparability of the both groups will be almost equal or comparable rather, facilitate the blinding of treatment, and increases the internal validity of the study, and random implies equal and the known chance. So these are the few advantages of the randomization. Now, another form of randomization is your permuted block randomization. Block randomization is to ensure exactly equal treatment numbers and equally spaced point in the sequence of the patient assignments. Problem with the simple randomization means is that it may so happen, say in the beginning there may be only control group, or in the at the end there may be the intervention group, or if in between we need to stop the trial, it may so happen there may be inequality between the groups. In one group there will be more subjects, in another group there may be more participants. So that's why block randomization is better. So if I take a block of 4, so after end of the each block, so there will be 2 participants in one group and 2 participants in the another group. But in practice, block size of 4 is too small. So, and researcher may crack. So suppose if the researcher knows the block size is 4. So once he get that say 2 intervention group, so naturally he can anticipate the next 2 group, 2 patient subjects will be or participant will fall in the treatment group. I mean rather the control group. So that's why mixing of block size between the 6 and the 12 is better. So there will be variable block randomization. So in that case, the investigator cannot anticipate when the subject is eligible or the participant is eligible, where it will be recruited. So it cannot be anticipated. So that is the advantage of block randomization. And after each block, there will be equally, the participants will be equally divided in the intervention group and the control group, or the treatment group or the control group. Now, block randomization can also be created by online. So say I have shown here one website. that is a sealed envelope, there easily it can be based on the block size and the number of sample size, sequence will be generated. So sequence generation will be very easy. And there is little improved form of randomization, that is the stratified block randomization. This is the advantage of stratified block randomization, can further restrict the chance of imbalance. By the only block randomization, it may so happen that accidental bias may happen. Say even after randomization in one group, there may be imbalance based on the some prognostic factor. Say one group there may be more smoker, in another group there is non-smokers. So to avoid that, stratified block randomization is useful. Make the two study groups appear comparable with regard to the specified risk factor or prognostic covariates. Now coming to the next form is the allocation concealment. It means ensuring that neither the patients nor the investigators is aware of the treatment assigned until the patient enters to the study. So say sequence will be generated by randomization, but that sequence to be concealed by the allocation concealment. It should not be confused with the blinding. That is, the blinding is the treatment concealment, but I am talking about the allocation concealment. It prevents the selection bias, protects the assignment sequence, and how to do it. There are different methods are there for the allocation concealment by the sequentially numbered opaque sealed envelope, sequentially numbered container, or pharmacy control, or central randomization. When the no need of it, both randomization and the concealment can be done together. Suppose somebody else is doing the central randomization. Now a patient has come to the clinic, and you have with considering the your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you have decided this subject is fit to be recruited. Now you inform the central randomization the one who is doing, he will just inform, okay, this patient has come, new patient, you put in the control group or you put in the treatment group. Okay, so this is about the allocation concealment. Now there are biases in the RCT. What are the different forms of bias? Bias may be selection bias. It is a potential eligible participants is excluded. So when you know that the sequence, there is chance of selection bias. The investigator know about the group allocation may restrict the allocation to a specific intervention. Suppose if you know that next patient will be recruited in the treatment group, and if you know the treatment, and if you are in your hypothesis is in favor of the treatment group. Now a patient has come who is very serious. So naturally you will try to avoid this patient because he will be put in the treatment group. So to avoid this biasness, randomization is required. So randomization prevents both randomization, including the allocation concealment, they prevent the selection bias. Now another form of bias may be there, ascertainment bias. That is the distortion of result by knowledge of which intervention each participant are receiving. If the investigator knows that which patient is getting the control and which patient is getting the treatment, there is every possible chance of biasness. The person administering the intervention or the person receiving the intervention, if the person knows, the participant knows he is getting the say new drug, which is not even approved, or he is getting the placebo only. So naturally, there will be some biasness, or the investigator assessing or the analyzing the outcome assessors. So in any steps, there may be biasness. So this biasness can be avoided by the blinding. Now there may be accidental bias. So suppose even after randomization, there may be some, the two groups are not comparable. So that is called accidental bias. So that can be avoided by the stratified block randomization. Now what is blinding? All these are potential problem can be avoided by the blinding, this biasness. It should not be confused with allocation concealment. As I already told, they are called actually the treatment concealment. Blinding seeks to prevent the ascertainment biases blinding helps to eliminate the co-intervention. If the subject knows that he is taking placebo only, so he may think with this placebo I will not be all right. So participant may take some other drug also, or even the investigator may give some other drugs also. So there may be chance of co-interventions. The blinding is also called masking or the concealment of treatment, is intended to avoid bias caused by the subjective judgment of the reporting by the participants, or by the evaluation by the investigators, or data processing, or the analysis due to knowledge of threat. If you know that which group is getting what, so in that way there is every chance of bias. So that can be avoided by blinding. Now there are different forms of blinding. There may be single blinded or double blinded. Now what is the hierarchy of blinding? It may be open level, or that means no blinding. Everybody knows what subjects treatment, who are getting the treatment and who are getting the control. Single blinded, usually the patient, and the double blinded, when both the patient and the assessor are blinded, and complete blinded means everyone involved in the study are blinded to the treatment. Now some basic trial design. So this is the parallel group, the population, sample, then randomization and blinding. One group is intervention, another is the placebo, and then with the follow-up you go for the outcome. This is the crossover design. In the beginning, after randomization, one group will get the intervention, another group will get the placebo, and then outcome will be assessed. Then again there will be crossover. Now washout period will be given, and then followed by the again crossover. The subjects who got the intervention, they will get the placebo, and the subjects who got the placebo, they will get the intervention. Then followed by the outcome assessment. Now there may be a factorial design also. That means the two intervention, they are getting intervention and the placebo, both intervention, one intervention placebo, and placebo and intervention and both placebo. So that is another design that is called the factorial design of the RCTs. Now ethics is a very important. So every protocol should be approved by the ethical approval should be taken, and RCT should be, registration should be done by CTRI. Clinical Trial Registry of India. Now, while coming to the protocol development, so this is all about your RCT, how RCT to be done. Now, before doing so, protocol has to be developed. The standard protocol item recommendation for the interventional trials. So that is called the spirit guideline. So any protocol to be designed, that to be followed by the spirit guideline. So this is the spirit guideline. So there are some items are there, so that's to be followed and protocol should be developed. Now protocol has been developed, RCT has been conducted. How to report? There is a guideline to initiative to improve the quality of the reporting of trials. The consolidated standard of reporting trials, that is called the CONSORT, become the gold standard for the reporting of the results of the RCT. An RCT statement actually, it comprises 25 items checklist and a flow diagram, and that's followed to report a clinical trial. So this is the just outlook only how the flow diagram looks like. So that has to be, every point has to, following these points, this 25 checklist, the clinical, the randomized control trial to be reported. Now coming to the critical appraisal of the RCT. Now RCT has been done. Now it has been reported. Now whether we can depend on this RCT or the recommendation what is being given, is it applicable? It is valid. So that has to be done. So that is the critical appraisal of the RCT. I'll just give you an outline how to do it. I hope people are not sleeping. Okay. Now what is critical appraisal? Definition: the process of systematically examining the research evidence to assess its reliability, that is the validity and the internal validity, results and the relevance, that is the external validity. It is a part of the evidence-based medicine. Now, why we need the critical appraisal? In healthcare professionals, the managers are going to make a best decision they need to be able to. So they had to decide whether the studies had been undertaken in the way that makes their finding are reliable, whether the RCT findings are reliable or not, to make sense of the results and to know what these results means in the context of the decision that needs to be made. So whether it is really relevance or not, whether generalizability of this can be done, that means the external validity. Now, explaining this study result, we have to look for the where any biasness, whether there is any confounding, or whether the result has been received by chance. The result has been received by chance or not, or really there is a true effect is there or not of the intervention. Now, biases may be selection bias. There may be a performance bias. There is a, and is at the end detection also during and the attrition. Suppose during the follow-up, say some after giving the intervention or even after randomization, there is a dropout. So that is the attrition. Whether how many of them are after randomization has completed the treatment or not. If not, so that the dropout will come under the attrition. Now, whether the randomization has been done properly or not, how sequence has been generated, how allocation concealment, whether it has been done or not. So those things to be assessed. So there is a study, just I'll give 1 or 2 slides of this study, an antenatal education and the postnatal support strategies for improving the rates of exclusive breastfeeding, a randomized control trial, which has been published in BMJ. There what happened, 450 subjects were randomized in 3 groups. One group got the hospital care, another group in the antenatal period, they have received the antenatal breastfeeding education, and another group, they after postnatal period, they have got the lactational support. So these 3 groups has been randomized and then that has been followed. But then after second week, there was a dropout of 7. Then lost to follow-up was 2. Ultimately, only out of 151, only 126 has completed the study. So this loss to follow-up is the attrition. But when we consider that in analysis, considering the total number who are randomized, then it is called the analysis is the intention to treat. So now we have to see whether the analysis has been done based on the intention to treat, or whether only the subjects who has completed the treatment, that is the PARC protocol analysis. Now, once coming to the reporting, coming to the result section, is the study power to detect the meaningful difference? Did they analyze the based on the intention to treat principle or not, or whether they have accordingly? It has been taught that clinical trial should be analyzed by intention to treat principles. Were they analyzed correctly? Do the result make a sense? What could have been the role of chance? Whether the result has been received, received the result which we have been they have reported is got by chance or not. So what is the precision of result? That is the confidence interval, and the statistical, whether it is a statistically significant or not, whether it has some clinical relevance or not. Those things has to be analyzed in the critical appraisal. Now then, power of the study, probability of rejecting the null hypothesis if the alternate hypothesis is true. Can the study detect an effect if there is one or not? So those things has to be analyzed. Now there are something called contamination or crossover. Sometimes participants are randomized to one control group, may unintentionally receive the intervention. So that is the contamination. The participant randomized to the intervention group may not receive the intervention again. So there is an example one, says to 20,600 eligible subjects was randomized, and some one group got the statins, another group was the control group. After 1 year, 89% was on simvastatin and 4% they received the simvastatin. So there was some contamination. And after 5 years, contamination was moved. 32% of the control group, they received the simvastatin, that is the intervention. Then how to analyze, what to do? the option is analyze according to the treatment received. That is the per protocol analysis. But if you do so, so that means we are not analyzing as per the randomization. So randomization is not followed. So that is the allocation bias. So that analysis should be done by the intention to treat. This is the preferred option, reduces the risk of allocation bias and may underestimate, but problem is that may underestimate the effect. The principle is that once the treatment is, once the patient is randomized, the subjects should be analyzed in the group where they have been randomized, even if they are discontinue or never receive the treatment. So, or there is a crossover. So that is the intention to treat analysis. Now, if all the result has been reported from a RCT, what is the direction of the effect? What is the size of the effect? Precisions, whether it is statistically significant or not, and the clinical significance. Those has to be analyzed. Now, the study what I have told, they have shown that in the group 1, those who has not got any intervention, at the end of the 6th month, absolutely breastfed was 11. So absolute breastfeeding was the primary outcome. Out of 126 mother who was on hospital regular hospital care, they 11 of them they fed exclusively, breastfed was 11. Whereas the subjects who received the antenatal education, in that group out of 122, 23 subjects or participants were on exclusive breastfeeding at the end of 6 months. Same in those subjects who received the postnatal breastfeeding support, out of 119 subjects, 22 was absolute breastfed. So once it has been analyzed, it has been found that relative risk was 2 point, and the absolute ration was needed to treat was 10 as per their report. Then what was the p-value and the confidence interval? The risk was in the group 2 was 1.1 and the control group was 0.8 and relative risk was 2.1. It was p-value was significant. And the probability that this result would occur by chance is less than 5 out of the 100. So that is the significant, statistically significant result they have got. Now, what is the confidence interval? The relative risk confidence interval was 1.05 to 4.43, and the true value could be as low as 1.05 or as high as 4.43, but probably it is closer to 2.17. The confidence interval is beyond the 1. Since the confidence interval does not include the no effect value of 1, the result is statistically significant. So after the reporting, we can analyze and can say that it was a statistically significant result. So we can be relied upon on this result. Now, how to analyze? So there is some guideline. So that is called critical appraisal skill program or of the randomized control trial standard checklist. The main issue for the consideration is that several aspects need to be considered when appraising a RCT. Is the basic study design valid and the RCT? So that is analyzed in the section A. Was the study methodologically sound or not? So that is some questions are there, some points in the section B. And what are the results? That will be analyzed in the section C. And will the result help locally in the section D? The 11 questions in the checklist are designed to help you to think about these aspects systematically. So then systematically you can apprise by following this CASP guideline. That is the critical appraisal skill program. Now, how to use this appraisal tool? The first 3 questions of the section A are screening questions about the validity of the basic study design and can be answered quickly. If in the light of your responses, a section A, you think that that study design is valid, then you continue with the section B to assess whether the study was methodologically sound, and if it is so, then continue with the section C and the section D. Now this is the just outlook how the CSP looks like. So this is the question number 1. So here we'll see the what is the research question, whether they followed the PICO model or not. That is the population, intervention, comparators chosen, and outcome measurement. Then number 2 was the assignment of the participant to the intervention was randomized or not. Then where all the participants who entered in the study accounted for the conclusion. That means whether they have completed the study and or not. Then coming to the section B regarding the methodology, whether it was proper or not, where the participant blind or not to the intervention, so there is chance of biasness. And where the study groups similar to at the start of the randomized control trial. So after randomization, both groups should be comparable. So when they have published the result, we have to see whether the two groups are comparable or not. Unless it is comparable, it is very difficult to predict or infer the intervention has the real effect or not. Apart from the experimental intervention, did each study group receive the same level of care or not? That is also equally important. Was there a clearly defined study protocol? So whether this has been defined in the protocol or not. So they are supposed to get the equal care. Where the effects of the intervention reported comprehensively. So the reporting part, was the power calculation has been done or not? Was the outcome were measured properly or not? Whether it is clearly specified, how the result has been expressed and interpreted. So these are the some guidelines. Which statistical test has been used, where the p-value are significant or not. So those things should be analyzed. Then number 8 was the precision of the estimate of the intervention or the treatment effect reported. The precision has been reported now. That means the confidence interval has been reported or not. Do the benefit of the experimental intervention outweigh the harm and the cost? So does it is useful or not? Whether it will be cost effective or not, that has to be analyzed. Then can the result be applied to your local population or in your context? So a drug may be very good, but it is so costly when patient cannot afford, or it cannot be, it is not available, then it is of no use again. So would the experimental intervention provide greater value to people in your care than any other existing intervention? Some already existing intervention, standard treatment is there, but this experimental intervention provide greater value. Say the new drug may be cheaper, or it may be less frequently has to be administered, so compliance will be better. So that has to be also analyzed. So these are the 11 checklists for the critical appraisal. So appraisal summary at the end, the record key report from your critical appraisal in this box. What is your conclusion about the paper? So ultimately you have to conclude about your conclusion. What do you think of? Would you use it to change your practice or to recommend the changes to the care or the intervention used to your organization? So whether you based on this RCT reporting, whether you are going to change your recommendation for the better treatment or better care or better healthcare improvement. So this is ultimately you have to inform in this. So, and could you judiciously implement this intervention without delay? So in that way, any RCT critically to be apprised. So any RCT, the protocol to be designed by the SPRIT guideline, then to be it to be analyzed. I mean it to be done properly as per the protocol, and then is to be reported as per consort guideline. And once anybody wants to critically apprise, that to be follows by the CISP guideline, it can be critically apprised. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful lecture. So participants can ask questions. You can unmute yourself and directly question to the sir. We have one question from Dr. Meenakshi Sachdeva. Ma'am, you can ask.
Yes, ma'am.
So she is asking how to look for other bias in a RCT.
Other
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 bias.
bias, there is a one is your participant bias, that is the allocation selection bias, and there is your one is your outcome assessment bias. So outcome assessment bias can be avoided by doing the blinding only, and the selection bias can be avoided by the randomization and the your allocation concealment. But there may be some other biases when before during the analysis, if you find that the two groups are not comparable, so that is the accidental bias. So to address that, we have to go for the actually the stratified randomization. By the stratified randomization, those biases can be avoided.
Thank you,
But
sir. Any question? Yes, Dr. Swapan, are you asking? Hello.
yes,
Any question? Participants can post question in. So we have a question from Dr. Anandita. Sir, can you explain co-intervention and how to avoid it?
I didn't get the question.
Sir,
What is
it's
the
in
question?
chat box. It's in chat box. Can you explain co-intervention and how to avoid it?
So can you explain the co-intervention and how to avoid it? Co-intervention means, say that is a one kind of biasness actually. So suppose the investigator knows the patient is getting, or the participant knows that patient is getting the placebo, right? So say suppose for example, you are assessing for a simple antipyretic drugs, new antipyretic drugs. Now if you give a placebo, though it is not ethically approved, or you may be given a new drug, so participant may think as he is getting the new drug, probably it will not be effective, so he may take another drug to overcome this or to treat that, to get rid of the symptoms. So that is the co-intervention. So that can be avoided by blinding only. Complete blinding, it can be avoided. So patient, nobody knows who is getting the standard drug and who is getting the treatment drug. Yeah, somebody has asked regarding the difference between the blinding and the allocation concealment. Yes. So many times we also confuse between the blinding and the allocation concealment. Suppose allocation concealment means by the randomization sequence has been generated. Okay. Now say if you are comparing with surgical management with the medical management, that means blinding is not possible. Okay. Everybody or the surgeon also will know, the clinician will know that this group of subjects are getting the placebo, the surgical management, and this group are getting the clinical management. Now, you have in the beginning, say you have decided before randomization, once you have select a subject that it is eligible to be recruited. right?
Or living.
Now, if you know after the sequence, you know, if you know the sequence that this is surgical group or this is medicine group, that means if you know that next patient will come, it will be in the surgical group, right? It will be in the surgical group. Now, you are in favor of surgery. Say suppose if a very serious patient comes, and as you are in favor of surgery, you by any means you will try to exclude that subject. But if you don't know the who will be the next, if this sequence of surgery or the medicine, if it is inside the envelope, that means you don't know then which the next subjects where it will be recruited, whether in the surgical group or where in the medicine group. So first you will assess the patient and you will decide, yes, this patient is eligible. Then you tear the envelope. Once you tear the envelope, then you find that inside the envelope it is written it is surgical, or it is written it is medical. It should go to the medical. So before that, before recruitment, you don't know exactly where it will go, even though the sequence has been generated by somebody else that it should go in the surgical. So sequence generation should be concealed. The investigator should not know that even though the sequence has been generated by somebody, what is the next sequence. So that is done by the allocation concealment. Okay, and but here, if you can make such a way that every patient will go to the surgery, say one incision will be done, though theoretically or ethically it is not possible, and placebo will be given. So that is the blinding. So every patient is getting the one scar on his abdomen and taking the drug. And so in one patient's one group, they got the real surgery, another group only the incision, and another group they got the real medicine, but not the surgery. Okay, so real medicine they got, and another group they got the real surgery, but the patient who got the real medicine, they had a only scar. That means both the group, they don't know really surgery has been done or they are really taking the medicine. So this is a form of blinding, but practically it is not possible, just to make you understand. Okay. Any other question? So it is not to be confused with allocation concealment and the blinding. But if the central randomization is done, so in that case, randomization and the allocation concealment can be together. How? I have already told, let me repeat. Suppose you have selected a patient. You have a patient has come, say suppose a diabetic patient has come, and you are comparing two groups of drugs, right? Say drug A and the drug B. Now, once you have found that this subject is eligible to be recruited, then you make a phone call to the central randomization unit. Yes, such patient has come, where to put. Now they will say to you, as per their randomization sequence, yes, you put in drug A. So that means you don't know. So that is both randomization as well as the allocation concealment already done centrally. Clear? But when the drug is given to you, drug A and drug B, the both drug look alike. So drug A may be the active drug and drug B may be the placebo. You don't know because they look alike, size, shape, color, everything is same except it is written A and the B. So that is the blinding. Clear? But in all randomization, randomized trial, blinding is not possible. Okay, so in some cases blinding is possible. Some cases there may be the single blinded, some may be double blinded. Okay, but there are in non-inferiority study, sometimes even blinding can also produce bias. So that is a little bit of say once the investigator knows that this is a non-inferiority trial, so his aim should be if that the two treatment groups, the result should be very close, so that he can say at the inference can be done that there is not much difference, the one drug is not inferior to others. So even by the blinding also, in case of non-inferiority trial, there is chance of blinding. So that's why sometimes it is said that the what type of design is there, the investigator should not know. So if investigator knows, the assessor, especially the outcome assessor, knows that this is a non-inferiority trial or binding, non-inferiority design, in that case, there is again a chance of biasness. Yes, any more question?
I think so. Any more question from participants?
Thank you, Dr. Devashish, for such an excellent talk for everyone. Starting from the planning of a randomized control trial to its protocol, and then to the conduct of RCT, and then the critical appraisal. So all these are extremely important concepts which you have introduced today. And it's very important to first learn how randomized control trials are conducted. And so then the process of critical appraisal becomes much easier. And that is how one is able to conduct the critical appraisal of the patients of the RCT. And we know that for the conduct of systematic reviews and or meta-analysis, we have to first see what are the studies which are being included, and whether these studies, when once they're critically appraised, one tends to include them into a kind of framework for meta-analysis. So any further questions?
Ma'am, can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I'm Mandeep, a PhD student from neurology department. Ma'am, in validity assessment, there is a point where all the patients who entered the trial were properly accounted for at its conclusion. तो मैम अगर जो पेशेंट का लॉस टू फॉलो अप हो गया, फिर वो तो हम कंक्लूजन में नहीं लेके आ पाएंगे ना? It would be possible only if
that is for the critical appraisal of the RCT. So if the
Yes, ma'am.
RCT has not told you about how many patients dropped out, so, and they have not done anything about correction of that attrition bias which would creep into the analysis, so then the quality of that randomized control trial will be certain to be less in comparison to the one in which this bias has been included and considered. Because many RCTs, when they are being done, and we know that all studies will have some attrition bias.
Yes.
So, but one has to explicitly tell this in the RCT, and also tell whether they've made any effort to have an intention to treat analysis for correction of that attrition bias which is there. So that is you can't do anything to the trial after it has been done and published, but you can certainly critically appraise it and see whether this qualitatively this is a higher quality trial or a low quality trial, depending upon how much bias has been there. Because in systematic reviews, we always look at the risk of bias tool, which is to be applied to each RCT. So if a systematic review has trials which have high risk of bias, then the quality of that systematic review will also be less, because then the evidence is actually having a greater risk of bias in comparison to the studies, where this has been taken care of. I hope I made this clear. Dr. Devashish, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have no more questions now.
So I think, Dr. Devashish, this exercise which now we have started, that we will ask our mentors from the northeastern states to give these talks, and also mentor some of these students who have been there trying to conduct systematic reviews. For example, even from Tripura Medical College, we have some faculty actually from pediatrics who have been trying to do some systematic reviews. So it would be extremely important for you to be available then, if it is possible for you to also guide these students who are there. So we will be setting up these groups in various medical colleges or centers where we have been connected to have this capacity built up for conduct of systematic reviews and practice evidence-based medicine.
Okay, madam.
Yeah. So please give us your feedback also, how you find these sessions, and whether you have any students who are actually conducting systematic reviews. It will be extremely useful for us to know that. And I think it will be good for you also to start doing some systematic reviews or make your students do systematic reviews. So, well, if there are no more questions, I would really like to thank Dr. Debashish for such a nice talk. And thank you everybody for participating. I'd like to tell all of you, I think that is about the filling up of the performer which is there. Dr. Vivek?
Yes, ma'am. We have circulated the link.
Okay.
They are filling the form.
Yeah. So with that, we will then log off.
Thank you, ma'am. So
Thank you,
Please,
ma'am.
if any participants have any question, you can share us. We'll help you to conduct the systematic review. Sir, even you can propose some name. We will help them.
Okay.
Vivek, what is the number of people who have joined? 36 now.
Today
They are
around 52. Today to 52 participants joined.
were joined at the maximum level. So that is really good. You try to collect your feedback from all of them. And did any one of the people who are doing systematic review with us have also joined?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anandita was.
Okay. So what is the next session and when is it for this group?
Next to next week.
Okay. All right.
We'll circulate all of you.
Yeah.
Next date.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Devashish.
Yes, ma'am.
Please put students now. You take up some of your students to start doing some systematic reviews, because I think it is difficult to do RCTs, but if capacity is available and the guidance is available, then systematic reviews can be undertaken by our students, and critically appraise the randomized control trials. The courses which we conduct, we also give them an exercise for actual critical appraisal of our RCT. So what we do, like you had quoted an example, but what we do is we send them a paper of an RCT, like a recently published RCT, and then we ask them to use the CASP tool, which is critical appraisal of it's randomized control trials that is used on them. And then we try to see whether they picked up any defects in allocation or selection or concealment, or all kind of biases, attrition bias or detection bias, which I think, and also publication bias in those. So thank you very much. I think we would leave then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.